Is the Sandman what happens when Netflix means business? Let's find out. The Sandman was released on Netflix on the 5th of August and it stars Tom Sturridge as the titular character. It follows the story of how he was captured on Earth and all the things that happened during the time period and the process of him getting back his powers and pretty much fixing the world and putting everything into a proper equilibrium. And I love the way it started because here's the thing. It was created by Neil Gaiman. It's from the comics. It's a property by owned by Warner Brothers, which was actually interesting to see because you would think since it's owned by Warner Brothers, it should be on HBO Max, not Netflix. But of course, there's a kind of deal between them, and we have it on Netflix this time around. And it's clear that Netflix meant business with this one because a lot of the CGI, and it includes a lot of CGI, but a lot of it was believable for the most part. Nothing felt cheap. And I liked that about the series. So I knew the comics existed, created by Neil Gaiman, but then I've never read anything on it. And I was coming into this as a newbie. So this was going to be my first introduction into the series, clean slate. They took us through the entire process of how everything was going on. It was also being narrated by the character himself, played by Tom Sturridge, the Sandman, also known as Morpheus or Dream. His power includes everything relating to the dream world, which is pretty much like 2/3 or 1/3 of the entire time we spend on Earth. So for you to know the kind of powers this character has, imagine you're asleep when you're at your most vulnerable. That's the domain he owns, that's the domain he rules. Now imagine a character with all that power being trapped by a mere mortal named Roderick Burgess. And this entire time, the purpose why he was even on Earth in the first place was because one of his creations, that's one of Dream's creations, called Nightmare, also known as the Corinthian, was running rampant, was running loose on Earth, killing human beings, which he wasn't meant to do. So just right when he was about to trap him, he got imprisoned, and that started a chain of events that was pretty much irreparable. It caused so much damage on Earth. Because first and foremost, because he controls the dream world, the fact that he's been imprisoned meant a lot of people will have problems related to sleeping. And yeah, I think they called it the sleeping sickness. It just had to do with a lot of people sleeping and not waking up. And it happened like that all around the world. Roderick Burgess's motivation was simple. He lost his son in war and he wanted to compel death to bring his son back to him. That was it. And of course, he got some help from an accomplice who was able to get him the book. But instead of summoning death, he summoned Death's brother, Dream. And then after his capture, Nightmare pays Roderick a visit and he tells him whom he had just captured and what he can benefit from capturing him. So the mutual benefits for the two of them, because Dream being captured meant Nightmare could run rampant and do whatever the hell he wanted on Earth. He was able to get his talisman, he was able to get his sand, his gem, and his mask. And with these come different powers that also offer him certain advantages. And of course, that meant a lot of success and prosperity for him, and he was able to get all of these things in his own lifetime. But then the thing is this, as it is with everything in life, pretty much everything in life, they must come to an end at some point. Now, there was a lot of time skipping because this initially started in 1916, but then we skipped 10 years into the future after his capture. And honestly, that was a bit of a shock for me because I was like, it was crazy. It just happened that we were shown the effect of him being imprisoned, and then I imagine the world suffering that over the period of a decade. The 10 years time skip gave us a bit more exposition on the story where Alex, Roderick's son, was about say 8, 9, 10 when Dream was captured. He's now much older, he's now in his 20s, thereabout. And then he's still a sort of shunned son, he's the unloved son by his father. But then there was an altercation, and for him to prove his worth to his father, Dream's crew, Jessamy, was murdered. And it was crazy because he killed Dream's crew, and while Jessamy was able to distract them momentarily, she distracted the guards. It was really like a frantic attempt to try to release Dream. And at that moment, I knew that she was going to die. It was very clear. It was like the kind of thing you do right before you're about to be killed. And yes, she was killed. And that moment was really touching. And in all this time, Dream never said a word. And you think that was enough, right? But there was a fight between Alex and Roderick, his dad. He hit his head against the entrapment where Dream was kept, and then he died. That felt like a Nollywood scene, to be honest. It just felt like one of those moments where you just push someone, and just go and then what a tragedy, the person has died. That was what it felt like to me. But then yes, he died. And next thing we saw was when Alex had a conversation with Dream. Well, it wasn't much of a conversation because he was the only one doing the talking. But then when he did the talking, next thing we saw was fast forward into the future. He was already old, and then he had a wheelchair behind him. I was like, what the hell? You thought 10-year time skip was crazy, right? We had moved forward by say about 70 to 80 years thereabout, because it was really old at this point. So when you put the time together, it's about a century or close to a century. And then this entire time, all he was trying to do was just find a way to just appeal to him that, yo, if I release you, do you promise you will not harm me and mine? But then yeah, he wasn't still saying a word. So imagine being imprisoned for well over 80 to 90 years and not saying a word in that space of time. Like, the pilot episode alone was just enough. Like, it was more than enough to draw me in, and I think it's one that you guys would definitely also enjoy, because the story and the world building was just so nice, so intricate, so neatly done that it will draw you in even if you know nothing about the entire concept of the Sandman. His lover, Alex, at this point, during that moment where he was doing his final appeal to him and he said, well, he's not going to come here again, he's just going to move. At that point, it sort of like gave him a leg up. So it sort of gave Dream a leg up by scratching off some of the sigil with the tire tracks of the wheelchair. And that was all he needed to escape. But by the time he escaped, it was a dope escape sequence. By the time he escaped, when he went back to the dream world, man, everything had gone to crap. Like, every single thing was messed up. Yeah, when you think about it, even when something is left unattended for a day, a week, a year, it will go to crap. I mean, look at buildings or structures that were created by the government. You leave it alone for 6 months, a year, they would wither away. Now imagine what it's like for about a century or more. Yeah, so his entire world had been destroyed, his powers had been taken from him, the sand, everything. So now he was on a quest to regain his power and also deal damage to all the people who have hurt him. And this entire story was just great. All the different characters that were introduced. They introduced Cain and Abel. I know it was funny because when I saw one of the characters and I saw that one was looking grumpy and he was a farmer, and this was medieval times, in my mind I was like, no, not medieval times. This was more like the old, I don't know, it just gave me that whole Bible vibe. So I was like, no, they did not go there. And lo and behold, it was Cain and Abel. And I was like, wow. And of course, yes, Cain killed Abel too. And it seems like this was a recurring thing between them, the first murder. So Cain will always kill Abel and will bury him, and Abel will come back to life and will find another way to kill him, on and on and on like that. It was just crazy. This series as a whole was so much fun to watch. It's one that I like the fact that they were deliberate about everything that they did in the series. In case you're new to the channel, this is GVNNaija, where we review movie series, comics, animations, and video games. And this is a Sandman review. Well, clearly, because we've watched a bit of it. Roderick had a lover, a young lover, and she gave birth. Her name is Ethel. Now, Ethel was pregnant for him in the past, and he wanted her to abort the baby, so she ran away. She stole a lot of money from him. She stole 200,000 pounds from him, and then she stole the 3 different things that they confiscated from Dream. So in that time, a lot of things happened that have now led to Ethel selling off a couple of these things. The baby whom she had is also an old man, but then, it was a bit confusing at that time, because you're like, if the baby she had is an old man, shouldn't she be dead? But then it was also revealed to us when Nightmare went looking for her, and then he found out that she actually had a charm of protection which wards off any form of evil against her. But not only that, but has the power to also keep her alive. because when she gave up that power, it was just instant. Like the death was instant. She just decayed and died right there and then on the spot. So a lot of things, like there were so many moving parts in this series, and all of them tied in so beautifully. Because when I talk about the moving part, how did she get the charm of protection? She made a deal with a devil. She did a swap. The swap was Dream's mask for that. Now, Dream, in search of everything, first it was an order of things he needed to find. He needed to find the sands, because the sands will give him the opportunity to travel to anywhere he pleased. So he found the sand. How did he find the sand? It was through Constantine. The Constantine character in this one also had her own arc that was just beautiful and crazy in its own way. But then he got his sand, he had to go to hell to get his mask, because the mask had been traded with a demon. So he needed to find that. There was one thing about that hell sequence. I mean, there were so many things that happened in hell that you guys just have to watch yourself if you've seen it. If you haven't seen it yet, but if you have, you know what I'm talking about. But the sequence in hell that was the most mind-blowing was his fight with Lucifer. Now, I don't know if you guys have played The Witcher 3 before, but if you haven't, there's this card game in The Witcher 3 called Gwent. Now, when I first started playing The Witcher, I was introduced to it. You get introduced to it in the course of one of the main stories that you're playing. But then I wasn't really into it. I was like, yeah, this is just a distraction. But I kid you not, the moment I started playing Gwent properly, then I understood why The Witcher 3 won Game of the Year. I'm serious. Like, the story is great. Action is great. Everything about The Witcher 3 is great. But see, Gwent is just spectacular, amazing. And proof of that is the fact that Gwent was so good, CG Projekt Red had to create a standalone Gwent game, which is still alive today and has made them thousands into millions of dollars. So yeah, that was me digressing, but I'm going back to that fight itself. The medieval rap battle, because that's what I'm calling it. The medieval rap battle between Lucifer and Dream was just such a sight to behold. Because honestly, initially when Crozon chose his champion as Lucifer, I was thinking this would be some kind of heavy-laden CGI, boom boom bam bam kind of fight, right? But then it was a battle of the mind, battle of the imagination brought to life. So when and it started out tame, it started out small, Lucifer saying, I am a wolf, all eating, all consuming, that kind of stuff. And then Dream said, I am a knight with my stallion and everything. And it started out tame and everything. And next thing, we found ourselves hearing stuff like, I am a planet, I'm a nova, all consuming, all cremating. And then we see a nova destroying an entire planet. It was insane. And the craziest part was when Lucifer went as far as saying, I am anti-life, the beast of judgment, the dark at the end of everything. And when Lucifer said that, I was like, God damn, trump card, it's done. But of course, since this is Dream's story and Dream will have to win, there was something that came to mind, and I was glad that I was right, because the next thing he said was, I am hope. And when he said that, I was like, yes, that's it. Hope is the reason why we wake up every morning. Hope is the reason why no matter how dark it gets, we strive for a better life. And honestly, when I heard Lucifer say, I am the anti-life, I'm everything, it immediately just teleported me to DC Comics, and teleported me to the one character that no matter what happens, even with the anti-life equation, it will still be able to overcome. And yes, if you are guessing it, you know what I'm talking about, Superman. And that was it. And what is Superman's thing? Superman is hope. Superman is hope personified. So when Dream said, I am hope, I was just like, yeah, Superman, anyone. Because it was just so beautiful to watch. It was like some medieval rap lyric kind of battle. That was why I mentioned Gwent earlier. But then it was just so good to watch. It was, honestly, for me, it was a beautiful scene. I really loved it. It's just sold more of this already amazing story to me. And then moving on to the next sequence, because the way this series goes, it's like a series of short stories, but then they are all tied together by one major character, the Sandman, Dream. We've got his different family members, right? Whose names also start with D. Despair and Desire, who are twins, and then we've got Destiny, and we've also got Dream himself. And there's also Delirium that was mentioned. But then we did not really get to see much of Delirium, so I'm guessing that will be a season 2 thing, because believe you me, there's definitely going to be a season 2, maybe sometime in 2023 or 2024, but there will be a season 2. It feels like it's sort of kind of like an anthology series, but not an anthology series, because it's part of a whole thing. And why am I saying that? When we move to the next part, so now it's got his sand and it's got his mask from hell. And now we move to the next part, which is him getting his gem. Now, his gem has been altered in some way by Roderick's son, John. And when he moves to where his gem backfires, attacks him. And then we now get to see him out of the picture for a bit. How we get to see John wreak havoc. There was this scene in the diner where John already had his powers, right? And then at this point, he said he wanted the world to be honest. He wanted everybody to just tell their truths. But Lord have mercy, the truth that he was showing was just anarchy. He reminded me of Vecna from Stranger Things. Evil people that just do evil people for the sake of evil and justify it as good. That is the good that is good for the world or whatever, because that was what John Progress was. That entire scene in the diner was just brilliant. It was crazy, because it was crazy how one small thing just turned into this bigger thing, and everything was just anarchy. And then his fight versus Dream was just the icing on the cake. Now, that fight, that was the kind of fight that it felt like it was a video game, because after defeating a character, you now get a sort of power, because now Dream did not need his gem anymore to have full control of his powers. His gem contained a lot of his powers, but then when it was broken, it was let loose and everything was now back to him. But that entire arc with John Progress was really good. I see, and that's the way it is. Even though you will need some kind of context, right? If you just found yourself smack dab in the middle in that episode, because that was episode 5, you will not feel all that lost in a way. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but it was just good. I mean, I would definitely advise you start from episode 1, second 1. But then it was just that good, even as a standalone. Now I'll move on to episode 6. Now, for me, I think episode 6 deserves an award on its own. Even if the series does not get an award, which I think it should, but then episode 6 deserves an award for just the brilliant storytelling. Now we get to see 2 different arcs with Dream in this story, and so it sort of ties in with his sister Destiny and Hobbs, Dream's immortal friend. Now, that episode was just beautiful. That's the best word I can give to it. You need to watch it to understand what I'm saying, but a quick summary of that episode just has to do with Destiny. Destiny's job is also death. So when they say you meet your destiny, that means you meet death. So it actually went back full circle in a way when Dream was explaining to Destiny that when he was captured, it was actually her that they were looking for. And she was like, yeah, she's aware that she knows, because she's the one who is in charge of death. So if she was captured and she was willing, she would have been the one who would bring back Roderick's son. But instead, it was him that was captured. It was Dream that was captured. And her job is just to find you at that moment when you have died or you're about to die, and just ease you into the moment of death, because so many people are scared of dying, scared of what comes after. So her job is just sort of ease you into it. So she's not the Grim Reaper, but she's the one that controls the situation. So it reminds me of a DC Showcase episode of Death. If you guys haven't seen that yet, I think you should. It was also very, very beautifully done. It's about less than 5 minutes long, so 4 minutes and some seconds. It's really good. And now it ties into, she has the power over death, right? It ties into the episode with Hobbs where they went all the way back to the 12th century and they found themselves in a tavern. And then there was this character named Hobbs that said people choose to die. It's people's choices to die. That's why they die. That he has decided he's not going to die. And then they were like, okay, in that case, let them play a game. They are going to make sure they keep this guy alive. He's not going to experience death. And Dream went to tell him that's exactly what will happen. And then lo and behold, he was shocked because the deal was 100 days from that day in that same server they were going to meet. And then he was shocked in his first 100 days. He was like, yes, he did not die. It was crazy for him to wrap his mind around. And then another 100 years, they met each other again, but this time it was opulent, it was rich, it was everything. I have the feeling that this is where it was going to go bad for him. As an immortal, you don't love mortals like intimately. You can love them as per loving platonically, but you don't love intimately, because that would be the beginning of your end. And then yes, he was showing dream. It was like, my wife, my child, and I was like, yeah, things are going to go south for this guy. And yes, now 100 years, it went south for him because his wife died at childbirth, giving birth to their second child. His son died in a bar fight when he was 20. And then, the way he used to hide the fact that he was still the same person was he would just travel to some place or he would relocate and then he'll come back as his son. But then he was so grief-stricken that he was in this place for 40 years. And by the time he came out, there was no wrinkle on his skin. Everybody thought he was a witch, and man, he was tortured. So many things happened to him. So yes, he was a vagrant at that point in time. And that's the thing. It reminds me of the old guard, the guy that was a member of the old guard that betrayed them. He watched both his kids die. And that's the thing. It's one of two things. It's that you have a fellow immortal whom you're also intimate with, and hopefully none of you breaks the other person's heart. If not, you have an immortal enemy too, or you don't just love like that. But then after that time, and he had learned his lesson, he still was willing to live forever. And yes, the different times, the different eras, and we're just seeing the different changes, and everything was just so much fun. There was a fight between them at some point, and it was looking like, yeah, this was going to be the last time they would see each other. But even though it looked like he stood him up, he did not actually stand him up because he was imprisoned. That's Dream was imprisoned in the time when it was their 100-year meeting again. A lot of stuff happened. I can't start breaking all of that down in this episode, but you guys will need to watch for yourself. It's all still in that episode 6. It was just that good. It was so good, and I think you guys will enjoy it. Now, episode 7 to 10 have to do with the Rose Walker arc and the serial killers convention. Now, that one was also very funny and so much fun. Now, the serial killers convention, there are people who are serial killers and they have a convention. Yeah, it's crazy. They have a community. They sort of know each other in one way or the other, or they know their work and they know how to contact each other. And they wanted a keynote speaker, and it was nobody else but the Corinthian, aka Nightmare, whom they were trying to get. It was just so much. It was so much fun to watch, because when they finally got his attention and everything was going all honky-dory with them at the convention, when you hear some sort of wordplay, and I think that was clever on the part of the writers, where you hear stuff like, okay, so in normal vocabulary, normal statements that we make amongst each other, you can see maybe a steak, you'll be like, wow, that steak is worth killing for, something like that. Or you say, I just had this steak that was to die for. But they actually meant it literally. So it was like a word play, and there were just so many random word plays like that I just think were smart and brilliant on the part of the writers. And the entire arc with Rose Walker, so there's something called a dream vortex. Now, a dream vortex is a character or an entity that has the power to break the barrier between the dreaming world and the waking world. So now imagine the things you dream about coming to life. It's crazy, because she has a friend who also lost her husband, but then she started dreaming about a life with her husband and them building their entire life together. They are both architects, so in that dream he had built the house that they dreamt of. They were having a baby together. Now imagine being pregnant in your dream world and then waking up pregnant. Yeah, that was it. But that's the power of the vortex. The vortex can go into people's dreams and also break the barrier between the real world and the dream world. That was Rose's entire arc. Now, Rose has a younger brother who was also separated from her when they were kids, because there was a divorce between her dad and the mom. So the brother stayed with the dad while she went with the mom. Now the mom is dead. She's 21 and she's looking for her brother because the dad is also dead. It was just another crazy story on that end, and all this time she was finding out about her powers, and lo and behold, she now had a great-grandmother who was pregnant. It was crazy, because she now finds out that she had a great-grandmother who was in the UK who was pregnant. She was actually one of the characters that we saw who had the sleeping disease when Dream was originally in prison. And it turns out that this was also part of some sort of overarching scheme by Desire. So this entire time, we keep saying it that Desire was just the character that was going to make everything work out in a way that destroyed Dream, because it felt Dream felt high and mighty above all of them, and it was just one crazy plot after another crazy plot after another crazy plot, and it was so much fun to watch as everything was unfolding, because there was the serial killer conventions that they call the serious convention. There was the part with Rose and her powers, and then there was the part with her rescuing her brother, because the family that took him in as his foster family was collecting $800 a month for him, and the only thing he faced there was abuse from the man, the husband. So there were just so many things happening. So the way she was getting to understand more of her powers, entering the dream world, entering Dream's throne room, that was a shock for even Dream himself. And the fact that he would have been faced with the possibility of having to kill her because she's a threat to existence as it is. Because it's one of two things: it's either she dies or she destroys the whole of existence, and that includes her brother and any other person she might love. So it was just so much to unpack in the 3 episodes, because it started with episode 7 with her. She was shown for a brief moment in episode 5, so it would have been like a sort of cameo thing. But then it's just so much fun to see that pretty much everybody's character or every story is interconnected in some way or the other. It did not feel like there were any loose ends. It did not feel like there was anything just done half-assed or for the sake of doing it. And that is something that I truly did appreciate about this series. One thing I'm going to say though is there's a lot of homosexual stuff in this series. Now, it does not detract from the story. So if you find yourself offended by that normally, I think that might be a problem for you, because in the world in general, at least statistics show that there are less than 10% of gay and homosexuals, right? Like gay people in general. But then in this series, it's like for every 2 couples you see, there is one that is gay. Honestly, even for every 2 couples you see, both of them are gay. It's just the way it is in this series. But outside that, I don't think that's a deal breaker. Also, another thing which honestly I think was a very nice stylistic approach to how it was shot, which I noticed online some people were having issues with, but I think it was actually brilliant. The aspect ratio and the way it was shot, because there are some scenes where it will look as if the characters were stretched out, maybe in the dream realm, or you find some sort of vignetting on the site as dark areas around the corner. I don't think that was a deal breaker for me. I think it helped tell the story. Honestly, I think it was done beautifully. Cinematography was just so good. I really liked that part from the series for me. So it wasn't a deal breaker for me. I think it was done well. And also the underlying theme of everything was just, for me, Dream is necessary. He's not necessarily evil or necessarily good, but even if I was to put him in a category, I'll say yes, he's more good than bad. That's the Sandman. But then overall, it's not about whether a character is good or bad. It's just a character it's a story of maintaining balance, equilibrium, because at the end of the day, that is what is going to make the world keep turning. And I think that was something that they did well and they accomplished well with this series. Overall, I really enjoyed the series. I don't really have many cons. It was good. It was fun. Also, as part of my final notes, while I have broken down a lot of things in this review, one thing I'll tell you straight up is this series is a slow burn. So even if you find the first couple of minutes boring, I'll say stick with it, because there is a really good story that has been told here. But then if after watching the first episode you still don't like it, you absolutely hate the series, then I don't think this series is for you, so you should absolutely skip it. But for me, I loved it. I am looking forward to the 2nd season, and I think it's really did a great job of capturing, that's first introducing and capturing the character, the Sandman, for the big screen. It gets a rating of 9/10. It was just that good. I absolutely enjoyed it, and I would love to watch it again. Tom Sturridge and the rest of the cast did an amazing job portraying their individual characters, and this is one that I think is an absolute win for Netflix and Warner Brothers too. If you love this review, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. It really does help the channel. Check out this video or this video next to see some of our other drop reviews on the channel. It's been Tech for GVN. Live long and prosper.